It is time for Formula One qualifying as we welcome you back to Barcelona on an afternoon where the tyres are fading fast and we are all set for a very tight battle at the front of the field. This capacity crowd will roar for Sainz and Alonso, but it looks to be Mercedes versus McLaren for pole position. We're about to set the grid for the 36th running of a Grand Prix at this venue. The Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya in Spain runs to 2.8 miles. The first winner back in 1991 was Nigel Mansell. The most pole positions belong to Michael Schumacher, and last year it was Oscar Piastri who was able to take the checkered flag first. McLaren have 2 poles in a row at this circuit. They're hoping for their first Grand Prix pole of the season to change all of that. The C4, the C3 and the C2 tyres are one step softer than this time last year, and everyone is trying to get those tyres to last. Where you qualify is so important around this venue. The removal at the Findlay chicane at the back of the circuit means it is possible to overtake into turn 1, but it is very, very tricky, and a requirement to do so can hamper your race. We are expecting multiple stops tomorrow, but this is still all important at round 7 of the Formula One World Championship in 2026, where the conditions are glorious. For us, at least. It's going to be sweaty for the drivers. Track temperature is up there at 51 degrees. That is affecting the grip underneath the drivers. The air temperature is 30 degrees, and so it's going to be hot and heavy work. Wonderful to speak to you once again. This is a different type of Grand Prix weekend, isn't it? Because we are expecting heavy degradation of the tyres tomorrow, and just 1 lap of pace possible to be extracted from the softs in qualifying now.
Yeah, absolutely. And we come off the back of Monaco, where the key to success is hovering just below 100% everywhere around the racetrack. 100% would mean a sizable contact with the barrier somewhere, and you come to an old school Barcelona where you can dip a wheel over the curb, you can run a little bit the gravel or the grass, means that they've got to seek out 100% performance. And with the tyres screaming enough, by the time they get to the exit of turn 3, that's going to be a difficult challenge.
Heading out onto the circuit, one of the home favourites, and there is the second. We saw Carlos Sainz leaving the garage. Fernando Alonso, a point scorer in this season, thanks to his 10th place in Monaco, that Monaco Grand Prix result that changed all the way up until yesterday when Pierre Gasly was reinstated in 3rd position. There's a Fernando Alonso grandstand that has a wonderful banner for him, and he has been cheered every single time he came to this place, where once upon a time, DC, there were empty grandstands and a little bit of lack of enthusiasm, and then Fernando Alonso joined Formula One, and this place has been packed ever since.
It has indeed. Spain has always been a sort of proving ground for the Formula One teams. We spent a lot of time in Barcelona, a lot of time at Jerez in the south of Spain, which was formerly a Grand Prix track. But we never got spectators, really, because this was the land of 2 wheels. Well, Alonso came along. They didn't even have a broadcaster showing Formula One on television. And he then, of course, changed all of that. We now have a sellout crowd. It's beautiful to look over the bankings around this racetrack as we're slightly on an elevated hillside, and it's got an old school feel with a modern challenge, and it's a great Grand Prix track.
It is a thoroughly enjoyable one. Fernando Alonso's last Grand Prix win coming at this circuit in 2013, and we have the cars queuing at the end of the pit lane. Let's put a green light at the end of the pit lane and send the cars onto the circuit. 18 minutes on the clock, and we have the 6 slowest cars eliminated at this session. Bit of a scary moment in practice earlier on, DC. Valtteri Bottas with a brake failure that sent him into the gravel trap.
Yeah, he had identified that as he came out of the high-speed turn 9. So whether it's a good thing to have time to think out his exit strategy or not, he did a very good job of shrugging as much speed off the car, downshifting, using the actual recoverable energy element through the rear axle to slow the car, and then ultimately had to pitch it into the gravel. So what could have been sizable incident, well, just became a sort of head scratcher for the team. And I'm sure, given that they've sent him out for qualifying, they've found the issue.
State championship going into this qualifying hour. Kimi Antonelli finds himself the championship leader by 66 points through 25 for a Grand Prix victory. He is 68 ahead of George Russell, 68 ahead of George Russell, 66 ahead of Lewis Hamilton, who is second in the standings going in to 7 of the World Championship. And Fernando Alonso taking the time to wave to the masses as he builds the tyre temperature, and that is going to be a very simple job on the evidence of this weekend. Haas have not been happy so far this weekend. They started the season with a car that was easy to set up. Every change improved it. They brought an update in recent races, and they've gone back to what they had last year, where they are searching for answers all the way to the end of practice 3. And as a result, Esteban Ocon and Ollie Behrman, especially DC, have been so downbeat on the radio.
Just don't feel that the car is responding to the normal changes you would make when you're seeking balance. It's one thing to accept that you may not have as much downforce or performance as another competitor when the car is at least responsive, but they seem to have found themselves in a window right now where it just isn't reacting in a logical way. That makes it unpredictable. Of course, that affects the driver's confidence when they're approaching some of these high-speed turns. And throw in the fact we're on a hillside and it can be a little bit gusty with the wind. Then in the same way you get turbulence in an aircraft and you feel it bouncing around. Clearly, the car is planted into the tarmac, but that wind has an effect to destabilize the aerodynamics and make it further more unpredictable.
DC, you've done so many laps around this circuit. You were in Formula One when the testing era meant that so many test days were completed at this venue. Just tell everyone at home the corners that can be affected by the wind around the circuit.
Well, the main one, of course, is where you're generating aerodynamic load. So if we start with the lap as a whole, if you've got a tailwind down into turn 1, approaching there over 200 miles an hour, as we see the Haas coming out of the final corner, then that just takes which then affects you for turn 3. Very high speed, high G, drivers' necks with the helmet strapped to their head, of course, starts to scream during the Grand Prix. And as we go on board with the Williams, well, Alex Albon has been having a difficult weekend so far, and it'll be interesting to see whether they're getting on top of that balance. I think they found something that suggested the setup had drifted from the intended position. So looking like he's nipped and tucked there with Sainz only a 10th away, so maybe they've got on top of that.
Sainz finds himself top of the pile at the moment, then it's Ocon and Behrman. Albon finds himself in 4th, which is significant because we expect the Cadillacs and the Aston Martins to be eliminated. So essentially, we are having a fight over a couple of places, and Albon being behind the Haas's and his teammate is not what he would want to see at this stage of the session. Early on, of course, though, and they will still get plenty of time to post more runs later in the session. Alex Albon, on average this year, the 18th best qualifier in a field of 22. Some contrast to this time last year when he was free scoring in the championship on his way to what was eventually an 8th place finish in the Formula One World Championship.
Yeah, it's been a difficult start for Williams. They were very straightforward and honest in as much that they failed to get the car to the opening test of the season here in Barcelona. And then the car has been a little bit overweight. As a reminder for any of our new listeners and viewers, 10 kilograms is about 0.3 of a second on lap time every single lap. So if the car is overweight, then there's just no way around that performance. And they've been getting that car on a diet over the last few weeks and months. And the progress did see them, of course, get some points in Monaco at the weekend, but it may be challenging here.
Yeah, Williams were on for a double point score in the last Grand Prix, but that late restart upending the order. You can tell that's Matteo Binotto, even if that's a long view with his distinctive haircut. Crossing the pit lane and it's a busy pit lane at the moment as our main contenders move on to the racetrack, including our championship leader, Kimi Antonelli. 5 Grand Prix victories in a row, 4 pole positions in this season, a breakthrough sprint pole last year in his rookie campaign, and Grand Prix pole on 4 occasions out of the first 6 races. But on the evidence of practice so far, DC, he's looked the second faster Mercedes driver.
Yeah, he's been slowly playing catch-up. Missed the first part of the weekend as that was reserved for the test and reserve driver to do some laps. So he found himself actually as a race fan in the grandstand. He was undercover in that he had a Spider-Man mask and a hoodie on. So when we saw him on the screen yesterday, it looked like someone couldn't quite afford an adult mask because it didn't cover all his face. But anyway, Mercedes have put all the budget into the Formula One car, and it certainly delivered. So I feel that, yes, he is playing catch-up, and I saw George Russell this morning at breakfast in the hotel, and he didn't bounce in there like someone with the weight of the world on his shoulders. He bounced in there with a confidence, and really it gave me the sense that he's feeling up for it this weekend. He's feeling confident in what the car's giving him. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how deep Kimi can actually dig, and whether he can get to a point where he can overturn George Russell, who we know needs a big result this weekend.
No escaping that for George Russell. He has failed to score in the last 2 Grand Prix. He's not finished on the podium in any of the last 4, which would have been unthinkable, really, when you saw how dominant his drive was to take the win in the season opener in the Australian Grand Prix. What must feel a really long time ago. Max Verstappen is out and attacking the racetrack at the moment. He has the fastest first sector of anyone so far. But as we went visor cam, DC, we saw the story of his weekend, fighting at the wheel of the Red Bull.
Second,
yeah, he has not found a balance.
Again, a very good sector.
He's had to sort of dial in all of his magic there, as you see, on power, kick of oversteer as he comes out of that low-speed turn 10. Not much downforce on the car at that point, and that's an area where the Mercedes has been mighty. They look like they've got predictability as they put the power down, and they've got stability as well. So lays down his lap, 16.3. Well, that would suggest that Mercedes have the potential, based on free practice, to do their opening laps in the 15s.
It's been a tricky weekend for Pierre Gasly. Ever since he got the news that he was reinstated to the podium, that has been an Alpine that is troublesome for him. They had to do a gearbox change on the car. They broke the curfew last night trying to troubleshoot an issue.
Max,
he was level pegging with his teammate earlier on in practice, 1 place ahead.
Let's see,
and he's 1 place ahead once again as Charles Leclerc goes to the top of the pile by 0.3 of a second. Then it's Max Verstappen, Nico Hülkenberg, Gasly and Colapinto. Hadjar, who I have to say took the demotion off the podium really well. If you consider that he doesn't hide any of his emotions, he took it on the chin and said he was pleased for Pierre. He said the only thing he was worried about was losing the points in the championship, which was a strong mentality. And what else can you do when you've been shuffled off the podium a few days after the event? George Russell is now the fastest driver out there with a 1:15.7. He's ahead of Charles Leclerc, then it's Kimi Antonelli on a 15.9. And I'm intrigued to see where the second Ferrari goes. 0.7 of a second off the raw pace earlier on for Lewis Hamilton, but he is quickest. And I can tell you, by way of tyre comparison, it is a new set for everyone out there. And Hamilton, who all he was doing on the radio earlier on, DC, was asking where he was losing time. That's a question for everyone else right now. He is fastest.
Yeah, that will be a nice welcome confidence boost as they've reflected on the pre-practice free, made any adjustments that they were able to do ahead of going out to establish where the racetrack is, and Hamilton will take a lot of confidence
Max is
from
supposed
that.
to start.
Nothing better than seeing
best case Max starts
at the top
P7.
of the
Come on! Wow.
Top 16 to progress into the next part of qualifying before we'll reset
Hamilton
the times.
has been given a black and white flag for driving
unnecessarily
unnecessarily
a couple of
slowly.
years ago. Piastri goes ahead of his teammate. He is in 5th. Norris is in 6th position at the moment. Running again, Oliver Behrman up to 15th, but only 15th. And the Haas is really at risk of falling at the first hurdle. For the Cadillac drivers, for the Aston Martin drivers, it's just a hit and hope at this stage of the weekend. As we go over the line with Valtteri Bottas, he improves to 19th position, personal best in all three sectors of the racetrack. The yellow flag I'm hearing was for Lance Stroll, who is still circulating on my graphic in front of me. Let's go to the first turn. This is Carlos Sainz, not Alex Albon. And Carlos Sainz breaking into the first turn with a lock-up. Oh, you see plenty of those. Then you've got to rejoin the right way. No, ignore.
What is happening, dude?
White curve, but to have gone that wide, I'm very surprised. But yeah, for Sainz, the lockup, it's sort of reminiscent of like what we've seen here with Stroll down in turn 10. Number of cars, including the Mercedes, found themselves being pushed on through the apex, and it's almost like it's a sort of control systems issue, especially in turn 1, which you give a big spiker brake initially, but then you're off the brakes and rolling through what is a fairly long apex corner.
Something is wrong with F1
yeah,
TV.
some anomalies in the way the cars are delivering the performance here. It's kind of what we've been seeing since Melbourne, Australia. This new regulation, new hybrid control systems, a lot more management required to charge what is almost 45% of the total energy available around the race lap. We were not at all energy limited in Monaco, but a more natural racetrack like Barcelona, then the management becomes a much bigger part of the overall performance.
So the driver's having to balance all of that. It is a changing wind direction down at turn 1 as well. We started the session with a tailwind. It's now a crosswind under the bumps of
Something is wrong with F1 TV.
drivers through who are on push laps. It's Hamilton, Russell, Leclerc and Antonelli. Albon is reporting on the radio that he doesn't understand what's going on with the car. In turn 9, specifically, that's understandable if you consider that he was a car's width wide and into the gravel at that point. Worth highlighting for you, Arvid Lindblad in 8th position, a winner here in Formula 3 and Formula 2, and he's carried that into the top tier of motor racing. He's 8th at the moment, ahead of his experienced teammate Liam Lawson. It was the same in free practice. It's the same again in the first part of qualifying. And our attention now turns to those at risk, those who don't have a time on the board where they can feel safe. Sainz is looking over his shoulder at a venue where if you give him the equipment, he's a 10-time point scorer, and he's absolutely desperate to get out there, DC, before the blankets had even come off.
I'm irritated, bhai. What the fuck is going on? Is it my browser? Is it my internet? Can someone please tell me what's going on?
Cadillac, and he is margins away from Sainz, and that might explain the urgency that we're seeing. It's only 0.02 of a second between Sainz's time and Perez's time. There is an opportunity. And Cadillac are in just their 7th Grand Prix in Formula 1.
Every lap matters. Every lap matters in practice. Every lap matters in qualifying and the Grand Prix. This is Formula 1. It's not Formula Fun. It's not like, let's go and have a little whee, this is nice. there's so much goes in, so much brain power, so much money. New technology is developed on the racetrack that we take advantage of in our everyday lives. So, yeah, it would be huge getting 16th.
And I get the feeling he's fully motivated after that error parking up on the grid cost the team their first point in Formula One. He has really been pushing the Cadillac underneath him. Around the 2.8-mile circuit that runs to 14 corners. We're heading now through the flat-out 6, not really a corner the drivers worry about. 7 and 8, completely different. All the momentum you carry into the awesome turn 9. That is high speed, and that's another corner exposed to the wind. Using a little bit of the exit curve, Pierre Gasly doesn't have a personal best in the first sector, but he does in the second. The driver currently in 13th. Everyone in the drop zone finding themselves on outlaps. Personal best improvement for Esteban Ocon and for Alex Albon. That's what they need at this stage of the weekend. Minute and 20 seconds to go.
Yeah, it's always the adrenaline pumps harder as you get closer to the cut-off point. Clearly, our front runners, Hamilton and the likes, no pressure from them. But for those trying to get themselves out of that drop zone, and Alex Albon again, another green sector in the middle. As we go on board, final lap, looked a little bit tentative through the apex as he runs for the line.
And he manages to get to 15th position. That was a real improvement of lap time for Albon when it mattered most. He puts Behrman to the brink of elimination and he drops his teammate into the drop zone. Sainz, Perez, Ocon, Bottas, Stroll and Alonso heading out. A fine lap for Hulkenberg, who moves up to P5. The top 11 did not run again at the end of this session. Ocon goes to 15th. Behrman responds to drop both Williams down into the bottom 6 at the moment. Here's Fernando Alonso, who has conjured some absolute magic when it comes to qualifying around here in the past, but even by his standards, it would be very, very difficult. And he finds himself behind Stroll for the first time in over 40 races with the checkered flag out. Lance Stroll will out-qualify Fernando Alonso. Perez gets to 19th. He will out-qualify Valtteri Bottas. And Esteban Ocon and Alex Albon couldn't find the improvement at the last. Sainz manages to get to P16, and he has escaped. There are a lot of drivers who could have fallen on that first hurdle, but Carlos Sainz finds his way into the next part of qualifying. Albon found a big chunk of time, not enough. He is eliminated with Ocon, and then it's the Cadillacs and the Aston Martins. Sainz scraping through, along with Lawson and Bortoletto. The top 14 separated by 9/10 of a second. But it's Ocon, Albon, Perez, Bottas, Stroll finally out-qualifying Fernando Alonso, who will start his home race at the back of the field in 22nd place. Lewis Hamilton was fastest in Q1. Well, a big margin, DC, between Behrman and Ocon on the timing page. Half a second between them. And Behrman, who looked a candidate to be under pressure, delivers under the pressure of the end of Q1.
Yeah, he's doing a brilliant job.
But anyway, I think we maximize it for tomorrow. We are a good position for tomorrow.
Yeah, that's the compromise.
Well, that compromise that they mentioned, to me, would suggest race setup versus what would be maybe the best for a single lap. And I think given where this team is in its journey, that's the smart move. And it's going to be a long Grand Prix. We're expecting multiple stops tomorrow. So if Cadillac can be reliable and consistent, which we think back on Perez's early career, he was sort of, you know, he was the conservationist amongst the paddock. He was able to make tyres go a distance that others could only dream of.
Yeah, his early podiums with the Sauber team in the 2012 season, all built on that skill of extracting the best from the Pirelli rubber and just able to go deeper into the Grand Prix than anyone else seemed to be able to do so. Certainly in the midfield, he continued that when he raced for Force India with podiums that others could not manage when it came to running deep into the Grand Prix. In Sochi, in Monaco, yeah, it's always been a skill. He'll try and replicate it again tomorrow, but he's out in the first part of qualifying. Esteban Ocon, Alex Albon, Sergio Perez, Valtteri Bottas, Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso have been eliminated from qualifying. Lewis Hamilton was fastest in that session. Let's get some analysis now with Callum Nicholas down in the pit.
How are we doing, Alex? Great to be back here. Well, an interesting session, that one. Obviously, the first thing to talk about being Lance Stroll, finally out-qualifying his teammate Fernando Alonso. Unfortunately, Fernando, that has come at his home Grand Prix. But being a little bit more optimistic and looking further up the field, what a lap from Nico Hülkenberg. Now, could Audi be serious challengers for Q3? That is the question that we're waiting to find out. But then, let's talk about the Ferraris. Lewis Hamilton, faster than Charles Leclerc in that session, putting it on the top step for now. We'll have to see if he can continue that. Obviously, Charles gone in with a new brake package. It'd be interesting to find out after qualifying how he feels that's worked out for him. But all in all, I think this could really heat up. I was a bit surprised that the McLarens weren't further up the pecking order in that session. It's going to be an interesting one to see. I still think it's going to be quite close up the top. I've got to say, I'm hoping that McLaren can pull something out the bag at some point here.
It'll be fascinating to see whether McLaren can dial it up on the pressure moment of qualifying Saturday. But there were many who believed at the start of the weekend that their car would suit this circuit. Although if you asked Oscar Piastri, DC, he said, I don't know. I've got no idea whether it's going to work around here or not. We've not had this type of circuit really earlier in the campaign. There are a few, the opening sector in Miami, which is a circuit that both McLarens are on the podium for. That's similar with the high-speed demands, but realistically, this is a circuit that tests every facet of the car that you've built.
Yeah, I'd say it's like the ultimate proving ground for a Grand Prix car. Medium, fast, couple of slow but long, slow corners. So no sort of classic big stops, point and then squirt as you exit. So yeah, it's a really challenging racetrack. And throw in the 51-degree track temperature. Race cars like cool. The engine breathes more easily. The tires just feel like they hang on a lot better. So the sort of utopian moment for a race driver is winter testing, 9 o'clock in the morning, new set of tires. And you just feel everything. You feel the grip, you feel the power. This is where it gets really challenging. In the heat, the tires, getting them to balance around the whole lap, especially with the variability of the speed of corners, it's just, it's a compromise. And well, we're going to find out as we ramp up to the final part of qualifying who has got the best qualifying car and the best compromise.
Looking at those who have been eliminated from the first part of qualifying, Esteban Ocon, he's out in Q1 for the third straight round. For Alex Albon, he's out in the fourth straight. It's his fourth Q1 elimination of the season. Albon, who is wearing a Nigel Mansell helmet at the occasion of going past Mansell's record of 95 starts for the Williams team. Mansell might have wanted to add another season to that, but someone took his seat, DC.
That would be me.
Yeah.
And, yeah, well, sorry, Nigel. Mansell fans, of which I was definitely one growing up. He was one of the star drivers, absolute commitment behind the wheel. He's sort of a mixture of a Hadjar and a Senna or Schumacher, and by that I mean he was quite an emotional character, wasn't he? You'd see him getting out of the car and throwing his gloves around and doing all that sort of stuff, but then behind the wheel when it came to a qualifying lap in those Williams, his Williams heyday, you knew you're about to witness something special. Absolute commitment behind the wheel.
And he won the first two Grand Prix held here in 1991 and 1992. Peter Sauber has been a guest at Audi in the team that used to bear his name a couple of times in Formula One. Started in 1993 and sold the team, got it back again, sold it again, and now Audi are trying to build a real foundation to do what they've done in other championships and compete for titles. But it's a long-term plan. There's a lot of teams out there, though, with long-term plans, talking about 2030, 2032. That was a strong run for Hülkenberg, who, of all of the drivers that went for a second run, he placed top there with a P5 effort, and then the next highest who went for another run, for example, was Oliver Behrman. We are waiting for a car to hit the circuit, but we have a green light at the end of the pit lane.
No one's leaving the
Everyone
pits, right?
waiting of the 16 that can still compete in this session for a chance to use the track at its best. It's just a feature of the tyres being good for one push lap, DC. Not like we've seen in Montreal, where you could do a push lap, couple of cool down laps and go again. This weekend, due to the sweltering temperatures, you've got one grippy Pirelli push lap to be able to use, and then the tyre is well past its best.
Yeah, it's that chemical interaction that happens when rubber comes in contact with tarmac. And on this particular track, with this particular track temperature, which according to my screen here has just dropped a degree. Not any particular reason, I guess, other than it's 4:30 local time here in Barcelona. So that, you know, 1 degree, if that's accurate where that actual sensor is placed, you can feel it. You feel it if you go out under a cloud. It just takes the heat out of the air, and suddenly the car performs a little bit better. The engine breathes a little bit better. As we look out of our commentary box here, I'm not seeing a lot of clouds, unfortunately, for anyone looking for that magic cloud, but the slightly lower track temperature will be welcome.
They will take anything by way of a cooler temperature at the moment.
Everyone's coming out.
Battling it in practice. McLaren still running the livery that celebrates 1,000 races in Formula One. And there's the winner of the Grand Prix 1 year ago, Oscar Piastri, who had struggled around this circuit in his first 2 years of Formula One, found a real balance with that superb car that carried them to so many wins. 7 wins for Lando Norris on his way to the title, 7 wins for Oscar Piastri, and he will attempt to mix it at the front once again in what has been, in the qualifying head-to-head, 4-2 to Oscar Piastri so far this year in the Grand Prix format. He heads out to the fast lane and begins the process of queuing as they take this prototype technology to the racetrack and then park it up immediately. But everyone's gapping as per the regulations. Max Verstappen trundling out there. He's reported understeer, he's reported oversteer, he's had a lack of balance. And at one point,
Everyone's on their
he reported after practice yesterday, DC, that the problem was the high speed, the medium speed, and the low speed. So not much to fix for Red Bull overnight.
Well, at least he wasn't complaining about the straights. And as we've discovered through the rumour mill, Red Bull powertrains apparently have the most powerful ICE engine, internal combustion engine, which is pretty impressive for a complete startup of a company. It's not a rebranding exercise. They didn't buy another engine manufacturer and call it Red Bull Powertrains. They actually, greenfield site, built a factory, and I think there'll be a lot of pride in that. Just an update in temperature. I think that sensor, they must have had someone standing in front of it, because it dropped to 49. It's now back up in mid-50s. So maybe whatever that sensor that gives us this information, momentarily there was someone blocking the sun from the track. So the optimism I was trying to share with the drivers has suddenly just drifted away.
Back to sweltering once again. Pierre Gasly does not have a Mercedes on the apex as he attacks turn 1. You get an idea of the flow of this corner, and it wasn't compliant through turn 2, DC.
No, got out of position, which then just makes turn 3 a
21.8, nice first sector for Max,
where you need everything balanced as you enter and accelerate into that turn and take the lateral load on board, first on the front tyre, of course, then onto the rear tyre. Once you get into the middle of the lap here, as he's coming out and dropping down towards turn 7, you've got an idea of what the car balance is. You know whether you've got understeer, you know whether you've got oversteer. You're now, as you approach 9, you just hear that small lift through the apex and little correction. Was that a downshift? Or was that, you know, it must be another recharge
Max second sector, 30.5.
Various paddles on the back of the steering wheel. Bit of traffic ahead, well offline, but it still catches your eye and distracts you. And then you just got those final two fast corners, tyre temperatures screaming enough as you get to this stage, but you've got plenty of downforce to push the car into the track.
Very
As he
very
comes
nice
across the
lap by
line
Max.
with a 1:17.6, and the
Lindblad,
car loose
3/10
multiple corners
slower.
off the lap for a driver who in his 8 starts around this circuit has made it into the top 10 for qualifying on 5 occasions.
Lawson,
But that was a loose
6/10
lap, and
slower.
Colapinto shows
Where's Hadjar?
that there is a better one out there for Alpine. He is ahead by a couple of tenths of a second, and Hulkenberg picking up where he
Hadjar goes
left off
second
last year, where he was
fastest,
inside the
2/10
top
off
10
Max.
with a strong
Okay.
run. There's a
Decent.
bit of timing with the safety car in there as well, but he's got good form. Never higher than 7th on the grid around this circuit, Hulkenberg, but he's looking confident at the moment ahead of both Alpines. who
Leclerc
he
2
will
tenths
try and
faster
beat
than Max.
to take his place
Okay.
in the top 10 shootout. Lindblad will believe he can get there again. That is a very good lap time for the Racing Bulls driver. Verstappen, Lindblad, Hulkenberg,
Antonelli,
and Hulkenberg's time has been
100
deleted.
100th of a
Goodbye to the
second
Audi on the
slower
left-hand
than
side. So
Leclerc.
it is Verstappen, Lindblad, Lawson, Colapinto, Gasly, and Sainz at the moment as Hadjar slots in to
Russell
second.
goes,
The top 4 have
115.2.
used new tyres.
So
Old
the gap
tyres for
between
Colapinto,
Max
Gasly,
and the top
Carlos
teams have
Sainz,
closed
as Charles
down.
Leclerc goes fastest of anyone so
They're
far
down to 2
on
tenths.
run 1 in
Okay.
Q2, and our championship leader has a mighty middle sector. That is really important for a benchmark for later on, because
Where's,
all of the damage
Norris?
that Russell was doing to the Ferraris
Norris
and
had
the
a bad
McLarens was
first
being done
sector
in the middle
and
part
a
of the
decent
lap.
second
That's
sector.
heading, which begins heading into turn
He
4
goes-
and ends just
okay,
before turn
he goes
10.
8th fastest.
This is turn 14, and George Russell's first effort. He's just looking to get it
Piastri goes
into
10th fastest.
the top 10, and he continues
Wow,
his
what's
strong
happening,
form
guys?
around this circuit, but the
Hülkenberg's was time
margins
deleted?
have closed.
Wow.
Top 3 separated by 600ths of a second. Hamilton nearly a couple of tenths back. Let's see where the McLarens go, starting with the Australian driver Oscar Piastri, who's a long way off there. There's no prep laps, so that's got a mistake in it, or he's been impeded
Okay, he
somewhere.
has-
Not
okay,
ideal
Piastri and
for
Norris
the
both
McLaren
have
man. Let's go to Lando
done
Norris, the
the
reigning
laps
world
on the
champion.
used tyres.
Bit of a fight of the car through the 14th and final turn, and he fades down to 8th. McLaren looked really good yesterday. That does not appear to be replicated. Tight at the front, but it's Mercedes currently fighting Charles Leclerc's
Okay,
much
I'm
updated
assuming both of the
Ferrari
McLarens will
on
improve
run
as well.
1 of Q2. We're saying that there is differences in the tyres being run at this stage. It was an old set for McLaren. Lando Norris is on an old set of soft tyres. Oscar Piastri on an old set of soft tyres. And we've been telling you all weekend that it's one push lap, and then the tyre grip fades away. The McLaren lap time shows you just how much.
Yeah, that's clearly they've made an adjustment either on aero, maybe a little bit on pressure, a little bit on control systems, and they wanted to go out and get a feel for where the racetrack is before putting on the new tyres. What's really interesting is Russell, who is currently the fastest by the tiniest of margins, wasn't actually quickest in any of the sectors. We've got a Red Bull in the first sector fastest, we've got Mercedes in the middle, and then a Ferrari in the final. So I think it's showing you can, let's say, be a little bit under the
I feel
tyre
this
in
top
those
10 will
first 2-3
remain as is.
corners to give yourself more performance at the end of the lap. And if you go all in right at the beginning, then final
Both of the
sector
Alpines
of
will
the
go
racetrack,
out.
you
Both of
might be
the
struggling with that surface
Audis
temperature
will go
and the
out.
performance. So
And
this is a
Behrman,
compromised
Sainz,
lap.
both of them.
We're not seeing any one driver owning all the sectors. Of course, as we get towards the final part of qualifying, we'll see 100% of their efforts deployed. But it's showing it is very tight there. Look at the time difference covering the top 3. What an exciting session this is looking like it's going to turn out to be.
Lando Norris has been talking of rear locking everywhere around the lap. This was turn 10.
As he drops it down the gears, you can see that drifting at lower speed. There's no big kicks of oversteer, but that doesn't mean that he's not on the edge of adhesion.
That was the first 2 corners of the racetrack. Norris using an old set of tyres, worth underlining, but finding himself 7/10 of a second away. We've got a new set for the final runs. Of those currently in the drop zone, Gabriel Bortoleto is in 11th place. He's ahead of Colapinto. And then it's Behrman, Gasly, Sainz, and Hulkenberg's time was deleted for track limits. And that was on the exit of turn 9, where you can get a car's width on the left-hand side of the white line, but it's not the fastest way around that corner. So he would have known that there was a massive improvement
Both
out
of the
there
McLarens
anyway,
heading
even
out
before it was deleted.
on new sets of tires.
McLaren's then a little bit out of sequence with the others, going out on their new tyres. Line astern at the moment, but yeah, you would get the benefit of a distant toe, not in the same way you would maybe in a Monza or opening part of Spa. So it just looks like they're giving themselves a bit of a gap. Piastri first out on track, Norris just going through turn 1. So this is all about, they've got perfect opportunity to prepare the tyres. They've got.
What is TM1? Fuck you. Fuck you, F1 TV.
So there's no excuse for going through their procedure to open the lap. What they cannot control, of course, is other cars coming out of the pit lane who might be in front of them once they are into the timed lap itself. That's the luck of the racing gods.
McLaren feeling the need to go out slightly earlier than traditionally. It's turn 7 and 8 for a team that were working long into the night. The team broke curfew for both cars yesterday evening. There's a mandated time where the work on the car has to stop. And that was brought in a few years ago now to ensure that the teams don't work every hour of every day with the people that you see down in the garage. But intriguingly, DC, they called it precautionary changes. It's a pretty extreme precaution if you're going to break curfew on both cars.
Yeah, well, is that how the engineers would describe it, or is that how the press office has described it? The bottom line is the end result is the same. You've got a certain amount of curfews that you can break before a penalty would be applied, and that's now been used up.
2 DNSs for Oscar Piastri this season, 5th in the World Championship. Lando Norris didn't start in China. He's retired from the last 2 Grand Prix. McLaren have been speaking of saying this year being a customer team when it comes to buying the power unit from Mercedes has been a disadvantage. They've been talking about that in the build-up to
is gaining a lot of time
Prix
in the last
here in Spain.
Yeah, Piastri is slower than Max.
Barcelona Catalunya tag for the first time in the event history. Spanish Grand Prix has moved to Madrid.
Norris is faster than Max
calendar for this year.
Around
Push starts with new
1/10,
tyres now for Piastri and Norris, on track at the same time and separated by about 3 corners. Oscar Piastri heading to turn 10.
Tidy enough in the braking. Does he keep it tidy on exit? We've seen some run beyond the white line there. Leclerc on his lap was certainly wider, which would have cost some time, but Piastri was keeping it clean. Traffic gets out of the way, and then, well, these 2 final corners. Grand Prix car comes alive at speed, so that's where the drivers really can enjoy what downforce gives them, although not really close enough to be challenging what it feels like when we get to the final part of qualifying, just behind Verstappen.
Lawson is crazy.
A better for Lando Norris, who crosses the line in 4th position.
Lawson going very
10th
fast.
away from the benchmark, but worth saying the top 3 are not running again. They remain in pits. They're happy with their efforts. So new tyres for both Piastri and Norris finds himself in 4th place, Piastri in 7th place, and those now trying to escape the elimination zone that you can see on the left-hand side of your screen. Bortoleto, Colapinto, Behrman, Gasly, Sainz and Hülkenberg, who went wide, left-hand side of your picture, at this corner, which had his time deleted. He backs off a little bit, cleanly around it this time. Lindblad and Lawson, the drivers looking over their shoulders, but they do have a big advantage in terms of the time earlier on. It was old tyres for Colapinto and Behrman. Bortoleto used new, so he needs an improvement. Lawson going well and moves up into 8th place. Now let's see what Hülkenberg can do
Lindblad,
as he rotates around the 14th and final
Colapinto,
corner.
Gasly,
He
Behrman,
gets
Sainz
inside the top 10, and Lindblad will need a lap to continue his feel-good weekend. He's had success here in Formula 3 and Formula 2, but he needs a response, and he is mired in the pit lane. Arvid Lindblad knocked out. He looked capable of the top 10, but that's not worked out. Ollie Behrman won't make it through into that session. What about Bortoleto now? An improvement, but only to 12th position. And now it's going to have to be something special if Gasly's going to make Q3 for the 6th occasion in his Formula One career around here. And he hasn't got the pace in the Alpine this weekend. What about his teammate? The Argentinian driver, Franco Colapinto, opens the active aero and out-qualifies his teammate, but it's only in 13th place. Lindblad, Bortoleto, Colapinto, Gasly, Behrman and Sainz, who doesn't have an improvement at the end, are the drivers to be eliminated, and Hulkenberg.
F1 TV सुधर जा मेरे भाई.
So bad. So bad.
And it's Bortoleto, Colapinto, Gasly, Behrman and Sainz who are out in the second part of qualifying. George Russell was fastest. A disappointment for Lindblad. He missed out by 0.07 of a second. That second run being abandoned before he got to the line, so there must have been impeding or a mistake earlier in the lap. He did not complete it, and he will not match his teammate at the crucial moment. Liam Lawson making it through. Isaac Hadjar again managing to find Q3, something he's made a habit of in 2026 since he joined that Red Bull team. He's the only driver from outside of Mercedes, Ferrari and McLaren to have reached Q3 every race so far this season.
He has been consistent in that performance, and so no questioning his speed. Got one of the toughest teammates to compare to in the Formula One paddock. And as you mentioned, with Colapinto out qualifying Gasly, it's always that, isn't it? It's always the comparison to your teammate. And within the confines of engineering, that's what you'd call identical cars. There will be tiny, tiny margin differences, of course, but as we gauge it, you've got to be able to show that you've got the speed.
The crowd are enjoying this one. We're about to get to the top 10 shootout to decide the major places on the grid for the running of the Barcelona Catalunya Grand Prix. And it will be Russell, Leclerc, Antonelli, Norris, Hamilton, Verstappen, Piastri, Lawson getting through, Hadjar and Hulkenberg making the top 10. So Nico Hulkenberg making Q3 for the first time this season. Liam Lawson has made it for the 3rd time this campaign. Before today's session, they were the 10th and 11th best qualifiers on average, so they have exceeded their season so far. Lawson P8 in that last session, Hulkenberg in 10th, making it through by less than a 10th of a second. Hulkenberg compared to Lindblad, 0.07, the difference between getting through and that dreaded P11 that Hulkenberg has been in so much so far this year. Let's get more analysis now with former Red Bull mechanic Callum Nicholas.
A little bit. I had high hopes for Lando Norris this weekend. I genuinely thought he might be able to snatch a pole, but it doesn't look like it's going his way so far. What was your take on it, Alex?
Well, they ran on the first run, Callum, the old tyres, then had to go out when the track wasn't at its finest. And Norris is only a 10th of a second away, but the others didn't get a second run there. Charles Leclerc was much happier in final practice. Antonelli has closed the gap, and under the spotlight of qualifying, they find themselves taking a step back.
Yeah, I think so. And do you know what, as well, like, got to give a good shout out to, obviously, Nico Hulkenberg and Liam Lawson there. For Audi, that's great. You know, the first Q3 start of the season. That's going to give them a good boost in that garage. Liam Lawson did really well to put it up in P8. I was impressed because, you know, in Q1, he was right on the bubble there. Weren't sure if he was going to get through Q1. So that's a great result for them too.
Thank you, Callum. Appreciate the insight down there. Yeah, it was fine margins for Lawson at the start of the session. Managed to get through. DC, that looked a very lively lap from Franco Colapinto when it comes to one lap pace. The first thing the team said on the radio is, right, let's just focus on what could be a complex and strategic race defined by how long you can keep your tyres going around this racetrack.
Yeah, the qualifying session, low fuel, you've just got to, it might not always be pretty, but you just want to deliver the best time you can, of course. But in the Grand Prix, this is definitely more of a chess match Grand Prix in terms of how strategically you play your tyres into the race. Do you go for, it's a very long run to the first corner, do you go for soft tyres to get launch advantage, and knowing they'll be in a whole world of pain very early in terms of your strategy? So, you know, this is a long Grand Prix where trying to minimize your tyre wear and get maximum distance out of them could bring you well into the points.
So the midfield thinking about whether they'll go for a gamble, whether they'll try something different. At the front, though, we once again find our top 4 teams bringing both cars through, plus Lawson and Hulkenberg. So they are the extra drivers in this contender, in this session of the contenders at the very front of the Formula One World Championship, a championship led by Kimi Antonelli by 66 points over Lewis Hamilton and 68 points over George Russell. And this would be, for Russell, a chance to re-establish himself in a championship battle where he has taken the hits in recent times, not scoring in any of the last 2 Grand Prix, retiring from the lead in Montreal, and then the drive-through penalty for not serving a penalty for speeding in the pit lane, and all that has been spoken about in that regard. So Russell trying to turn the page, and we have a green light at the end of the pit lane, the final part of qualifying, Q3 underway, everyone waiting because they know there's no great rush, there's no chance to do multiple laps here. You will go again. Let's have a look at Frederic Vesti, who was in the car earlier in the weekend, belonging to Kimi Antonelli. Went through the run program team, very, very happy with the detail of his feedback. He's been with the team for numerous seasons now and runs a lot of laps in the simulator.
Yeah, it's such a crucial role within a Formula One team now, that having that correlation not only between what happens out on track with the car and the simulator, but the driver, you know, the feedback that the test driver is giving when they're back at base running thousands of laps over a Grand Prix weekend that isn't available to the actual drivers and race team. You need to know that he's felt the tarmac, he's felt the balance, he knows what changes actually feel like in the real world, because as brilliant as the simulators are nowadays and the graphics are incredible, you're still not leaving the room. The scenery is not actually passing at 200 miles an hour, and you can press reset if you get it wrong. That doesn't happen in the real world.
Time for some real-world action with the reigning world champion in Lando Norris, and he heads to the circuit, beaten to pole position here last year by Oscar Piastri. Norris on pole here in 2024. Before that, Max Verstappen taking the 1 pole in 2023. He had a run of 3 years in a row where he won here, 2023, 2022 and 2024. He was superb, and of course Max Verstappen's most famous win around these parts. He became the youngest ever Formula One victor at 18 years of age on a sensational day in the Spanish sun back in 2016 when he held a Formula One world champion at bay. It was Kimi Raikkonen held to 2nd place, and star was born that day. He's gone on to become a 4-time world champion. Doesn't have the car to compete for that this season, but he has been on the front row in recent times. It's a different track. He will be looking for his best lap of the weekend when it counts. Antonelli in that last session, DC, closing the gap to George Russell. He's been playing himself in the last
let's go, Max.
couple of sessions. Let's go. About 40 minutes of practice earlier on today. But we're going to get a tell of the Mercedes battle once again with a shiny new set of soft Pirelli tyres on the Italian teenager's car as he leaves the pit lane.
Yeah, he's been able to dial himself in, have the advantage of looking at actual data in comparison to his teammate, who we know set the fastest time. So there'll be a few corners where he's faster, there'll be a few corners where George is faster, and he'll be able to go, right, okay, there's where I'm losing the most time. What do I need to do? Is it braking later? Am I braking too late? You know, they need to get the car rotated more. So really, it's the ultimate spy in the cab when you're competing against your teammate. And Antonelli, actually, of course, they all want to be quickest, but he doesn't need to win every Grand Prix.
Max,
He's
mega sector.
got to accept George
sector
Russell
too.
is a Grand Prix winner. He is a talented racing driver who's had a bit of bad luck and a bit of a reality check on just the development profile of Kimi Antonelli. But we should not be surprised if George
Very
sticks it
great
on
sector
pole
2 by
and
Norris.
Kimi's left wanting in quali. That's the great thing about this season. As the
Max goes
new technology is
115.3.
settled down,
Okay.
we're starting to understand the different dynamics between teammates, the different performance profiles of the
Piastri
cars.
goes fastest.
But this is
1
really,
times faster,
the
1.5
next
times
9
faster
minutes
than Max.
are going to be all defining
would
on
go
what
even
is one
faster.
of the ultimate proving grounds for Formula
Norris
1
choked.
teams, their cars, and of course the commitment of the drivers.
Antonelli has 5 wins in Formula
Norris
1.
crashed.
George Russell has 6. And could tie this weekend
Leclerc
with
crashed.
a victory which would be pretty unprecedented if he was able to win 6
Leclerc.
in a row. Got a yellow flag out there with 8 minutes to go. Oscar Piastri had a moment on the exit of turn 4. Charles Leclerc goes over the line. I can tell you, Verstappen goes over the line. Charles Leclerc has gone off the road. And now we have a red flag at the exact moment that Piastri goes top of the pile. Lando Norris's lap will not be able to be completed, and that will be stripped away.
Everyone
And Charles
lost
Leclerc has
one
gone off.
set of their tires.
Charles Leclerc has gone
Everyone
off into
who
the
came out of the
barriers,
pits lost
and he was
one
hustling
set of
the
their
Ferrari,
tires.
the updated Ferrari,
Except, I guess,
around
Russell.
the turns.
Everyone
and once again, Charles
would
Leclerc
lose one
is
set of
into
their
the
tires.
barriers.
Wow, that's a
He
big
finds
crash.
the wall at turn 4, where we saw a big snap on board for Piastri, and it appears that there's a bigger one for the Ferrari man, who is out of the car.
Wow,
and
that's a big crash,
collecting
guys.
his thoughts after a
It's
hit.
late.
It is a strangely late one for him, DC. He's out of qualifying.
Yeah, well, let's just go on board. As he approaches the braking at turn 4, slows the car down towards the apex, and he's going to have a snap here. Oh, yeah, he has just got more torque than he's got grip. And as he's corrected, we see that sort of counter correction and straight into the barrier. Very, very unusual to see a race car crash there. And then he's just over-optimistic on the amount of grip as he got a little bit wide from that first correction of oversteer.
That's
Stayed
scary.
with the commitment, kept
This
the power
is
in,
not a
and then
driver
at that
error. This
point,
is
he's thinking,
nobody knows what this
oh
is.
no, oh no, oh no, 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 no. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I can't sing.
This is
DC
anything but
providing all types of analysis.
a driver
for you.
error.
Poor old Charles Leclerc. That's the end of his run in Q3. Out wide onto the dusty part of the racetrack. Tried to
This
gather
is
it
sad,
together,
guys.
but that is a high-speed moment. Enough for the medical car to be deployed. That is done off a G-force sensor, but again, it is a moment into the barriers. It was a brake change for Charles Leclerc for this weekend, much talked about after his crash into the wall, which happened in Monaco, and then we found ourselves with the information there was a yellow flag in the cutaway. So once again, he's found himself there. Okay, so that's going to have changed quite a few things because of the timing of the red flag. There's no choice for the race director. You've got to throw the red flag when you've got a Ferrari in the wall there. Lando Norris had nearly completed his lap though, DC, but the red flag came out before he was able to cross the line, and so that run and that set of tyres gone.
Yeah, yep.
Everyone
you don't get another.
loses
That set of tyres,
one set of
unfortunately, it's just the way
tyres.
the
Except Max.
racing works out
Except,
sometimes, and it
Russell, I
hasn't
guess.
worked in
Russell
terms
can
of
still
getting
go
a
ahead and
banker lap on that
Do
set
one
of tyres.
softer
And
cool
it's-
down lap and
It's
then go
kind of
ahead.
weird, isn't it, that Charles Leclerc announced pre-Monaco of extending his contract for multiple years, effectively extending his future and his hopes of a world championship to Ferrari, and he celebrated it by crashing twice in Monaco and now crashing here in Barcelona.
A very strange one. He was so frustrated to see the chance of a home podium slip away on the safety car restart, and pushing on here. But beyond the limit has left him tumbling down the order whenever everyone eventually gets their laps in. No time possible for Antonelli, Norris, Hamilton, Lawson, Hadjar, Hulkenberg and George Russell. The only two were Piastri and Verstappen. Piastri was very loose around the same corner. We have seen plenty of movement compared to last year. There's not much by way of barrier repair required down there, just a couple of rows of tyre barrier, and they will clear the advertising hoardings away. Our championship leader does not have a time on the board.
This is sad, guys.
And the conversation continues down at Ferrari. Work to do for the Scuderia once that car is delivered back to them at the end of the session.
What I will say, though, as offs go and crashes go, that's actually one of the better ones for the mechanics and for the team. It's front end, you know you're doing nose, front wing, that front left corner has gone as well. They'll check the front right, maybe precautionary change, but nothing to worry about with the back of the car, which is where you can end up having gearbox changes, and you know that's a lot more complex. So if you are going to crash, going in front is the best way to do it, to minimize the repair bill, which actually, let's remind ourselves, things like rebuilding extra front suspension and noses comes out of the budget cap. So it has an effect on how the team can spend their allocation of development money. And we'll find out whether there was a torque spike of acceleration that caught the driver out. So obviously we don't have that information, as we said, in the commentary box right now. If it was just pure, let's say, frustration, because there was a clear slide of the rear, he corrected for it, he then committed again to the power and lost the rear end. If it was just pure, let's say, driver kind of desperately trying to eke out the last part, then that is an unusual error for an experienced driver like Charles to make. But as I say, the waiver from the get out of trouble in the commentary box is that we don't know whether, as the electrical energy was deploying, whether he got a spike more than he expected from his throttle application.
Let's listen in on the exit for Charles Leclerc.
Yeah, well, the telltale sound of increased RPM and opposite lock. Yeah, that is just a very unusual incident for a driver of that experience. So I'm going to go down the route of he got more deployment than he expected. Is it because I have a man crush on Charles, or is it because it's possible that that happened?
You definitely heard the engine note. Well, we will find out when he gets back to the media pen and gives us the answer. It's rare you leave me speechless, DC, but I think
I can see that on your face.
I think we've finally reached it after all these years of working together. The red flag is out for the moment, but the clock is paused. Plenty of drivers who had the push laps in progress were interrupted by that red flag. Norris lost out the most with the timing. Thanks to the marshals, they've recovered that car. And Charles Leclerc will play no further part of Q3.
Okay, track's green again.
Championship leader still to get his time on the board. World champion still to get his time on the board. 7-time world champion in your picture right now. Lewis Hamilton yet to get his time on the board. And we will see who can stack up to Oscar Piastri, who found himself at the front here last year with pole position and is the contender to beat. We've got the resumption time, which allows everyone to make their way to the end of the pit lane.
I guess Max will be the last one to
exit
the pits.
There's still 4 minutes until we'll get going, and that 8 minutes and 30 seconds will tick down. Okay, let's hear from a driver who had dreams of Q3, but just missed out 7/100ths of a second. Arvid Lindblad, our rookie driver in the field, was talking to us after Q2.
Everyone's going on
just missing out on Q3 there. Can you talk us through how that session unfolded on your side? Was there anything specific on that final run?
Yeah, I had no deployment into turn one, so went on power out the last corner and the engine didn't go, so it was 2 seconds off down before T1. So yeah, bit of a shame considering I think we were, you know, very much in the fight for Q3. Is what it is. I mean, I was P6 after run one, so yeah, to go out in the Q2 is pretty disappointing. But regardless, whatever, the team have done a really good job to give us a strong car this weekend. It's just a shame that we weren't able to utilize it.
Yeah, it must be frustrating right here, right now. Looking ahead to the race tomorrow with that strong pace throughout the weekend up to this point in mind, what do you think might be possible then?
At least
Yeah, I mean, for
Hülkenberg
sure
is not
points on the
stuck
cards,
in 10th.
but you know, I'm
least
I'm annoyed
starting
not to have another Q3. You know, I think we could have been fighting for, you know, P8. I think was on the cards, so fine. Yeah, we'll look ahead to tomorrow, but I'm annoyed about today for now.
Thanks, Arvid. Hard luck.
Mike Seymour with the questions, Arvid Lindblad with the answers, and understandable when you've got rhythm and balance and confidence
To try
to not
for
quite find the time when required.
Aramco.
P11 still gives him all the options for tomorrow, and we are expecting a really varied race compared to the one-stop fests that we've had of recent times. It is looking like a two-stop tomorrow. It's looking like we could have real variation of which tyres are used. The soft and the medium compounds, according to Pirelli, not separated by much at all. 2-minute warning to restart the session as the remaining drivers, minus Charles Leclerc, will go out and attack the racetrack. Kimi Antonelli looking for a 5th pole position in Formula One, his 5th of the season. George Russell looking for his 3rd of the campaign. And everyone else looking to beat Mercedes for the first time when it comes to Grand Prix qualifying in 2026.
It's interesting, Arvid, talking about deployment there. So for any new viewers that we have, then he's gone on the gas out of the final corner, expected a certain amount of energy to come from the electrical system, and it just didn't deploy. It didn't give him that kick of performance. And I think that as we're still in the sort of immature phase of this new technology, some are getting lack of deployment. We saw that with Alex Albon for several of the laps in Monaco last weekend. And then was Charles Leclerc caught out with a bit more deployment than he expected as he squeezed the throttle pedal towards full power. We will find out in time. That leaves one sole Ferrari to try and see if they can uphold the prancing horse honour.
Okay, mindset, DC, if you've just lost a lap like Lando Norris has, are you just going, all right, nothing I can do outside of my control, go again? Or is there a frustration that a lap that had strong sectors has fallen away?
I believe race drivers, and I believe this is probably across all sports, are masters at resetting. It's done, it's in the past, it does not influence what he's about to go and do. Therefore, it's gone. It's not in his mind anymore. He's got a set of tyres. The track's going to be live within the next few seconds, and he's got an opportunity to go out and do what these guys are brilliant at, which is find a lap when it really counts.
Okay, green lights at the end of the pit lane. A defining few moments for George Russell.
Let's go.
The new tyres remaining is a key graphic because you need a new set of softs if you're going to contend for the major rows, the top 2 rows on the grid. Only 2 times on the board. It's Piastri and Verstappen.
Everyone
at the
will try
moment.
to do
We've
one
yet
lap,
to see
one
the Mercedes pair
lap,
try and
then
add
come
to
in
their
the
collection
pits,
of pole positions.
get a
It's
new set
only
of
been
tyres
Mercedes
and go
on
out
Grand Prix
again,
pole.
maybe. We have 8
They've only been
minutes left.
beaten once
Lap
to a
time around
major
here.
event this year. That
One
was
lap
Lando
will be around
Norris in
130.
Miami in the
One
sprint
main
race.
lap
You
will
can
be
see
around
he's got one
180.
new set of soft tyres
And
despite
another
the time
130, so
remaining
4.5,
on the
4.7.
clock on the left-hand
Around,
side
yeah,
there.
5 minutes for
He is a 6-time
coming
winner
back
in the
into
Grand
pits
Prix
again,
format
getting a
around
new
this
set of
circuit.
tyres, doing a cool-down lap, and then
Kimi Antonelli has been told that
Bring
his
an off
opening
lap.
sector was very, very strong. They were happy with that. Pete Bonington on the radio to the championship leader saying, same again, please. And they're also going to give him a target temperature to hit. It just shows you they're still having to generate all of the heat required to make sure that rubber works effectively, but having to keep it down without spiking and losing the grip that would result even by the end of a 2.8-mile lap.
who's already started on a lap? Russell's already on a lap.
Yeah, but it's got plenty of space to get themselves
Yeah, they had
prepped.
a decent
Antonelli's
first
going to
sector.
be the first to launch it out over the line. Nothing but fresh air between him and turn 1. Nice flowing, say, medium speed
Similar
corner
decent first sector
where
for
it's all
Russell
about
as well.
positioning the car nicely for 2 and then trying to squeeze it to full power as you go through the high speed turn
Antonelli,
3.
a good sector 2. Hamilton bad sector 1.
He's a very smooth
Same
race
for
driver. It's
Hazard.
quite difficult to define his driving style because we've just seen him sort of glide towards these victories. We've not seen it really be messy. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. In time, we'll have a much better picture of just, you know, what sort of driver he matures into. And by that, of course, I don't mean speed-wise. He's proven that already.
At the moment, through the first sector, both Mercedes back on last year's pole sitter, Oscar Piastri. But a reminder for you, it's the middle sector where Russell has been so effective this weekend. That is the part of the racetrack he is in right now. Antonelli further on in the final corners of this configuration, trying to give himself a chance of provisional pole. 5 minutes to go. We've got 4 cars out on the circuit at the moment. Antonelli can only go third. Look at that middle sector. Russell repeats what we've seen all weekend long. That, DC, is where he has been devastating compared to the rest of the field.
Yeah, and he's fighting it, though, as he goes through the final hairpin at 12. One more corner to go. That mighty middle sector might have taken a bit much out of the tyres as he runs for the line.
George Russell to provisional pole by 300ths of a second. It was a fine lap for Piastri. Norris will wait until the track is at its best. Charles Leclerc is in the wall. His teammate Lewis Hamilton goes to 6th position. Isaac Hadjar also putting a time on the board. Good enough for P5 at the moment. Verstappen able to get close. They will wait. This a quirk of Leclerc finding the barrier, and if you don't have a new set of tyres, it's not worth running. So everyone else, Piastri and Verstappen, put their times on the board, but Norris effectively completed the lap, but didn't get to stand because of the timing of the red flag. He's waiting, so is Lawson, so is Hulkenberg. They had to burn through more sets earlier on in qualifying to make it through. And if it's not new rubber, it's not worth running. George Russell on a weekend of big pressure, trying to respond to not scoring in the last 2 Grand Prix, to potentially staring at the gap in the World Championship coming down to 11 points if he won in Canada, suddenly finding himself a couple of rounds later down to 3rd in the standings, but he's up to 1st on provisional pole with everyone's final effort on the new Pirellis to come. But the margin being 300ths of a second is something to remark upon, DC. McLaren, if you give them medium and high-speed corners, seem to have a real strength with this year's car.
Yeah, that's super impressive, the difference between the two. And you've got to say Verstappen, just under 2/10, is within the Verstappen factor margin of being able to try and get in amongst the two of them. Feels like a pole. Well, you can never say no with Verstappen, but it just feels like that might be a step too far. But the overall performance of Red Bull, given the sort of variability of the beginning of this year, I think they'll be quite infused by the upgrades, putting them into shouting distance in the front row. But as we predicted, it feels that this is a shootout between Mercedes and McLaren. And Russell, well, he's done everything right so far this weekend. Everything. Can he do a little bit more right now?
And it is worth saying that George Russell on the radio said he was struggling for power and was immediately questioning whether his boost was working for the deployment of extra electrical energy. So Russell potentially without a completely optimized lap was immediately on the radio to his race engineer Marcus Dudley. Antonelli with a strange situation in front of him at the moment. He's yet to be off the front row.
I don't think
this
so. Max is qualifying any higher than P6, to be very honest.
Yeah, it's been an incredible start to his World Championship campaign. He's got a lot of racing knowledge around him. His father, of course, is a racer. He's been brought up through the Mercedes Young Driver program. So, like anyone who is in motor racing, you lose more than you win. It's a horrible statistic if you were a boxer, but in our industry, they're just, you know, the Lewis Hamiltons, your Schumachers, the drivers who've dominated their eras of the sport.
Good sector won by
30% or less of the races they've entered, they win. So he'll know, even at the tender age of 19, that you're just not going to get it all your own way all the time. But right now, as he gets ready to launch his lap, he'll be absolutely in the moment. He'll be feeling what those tyres have given him on the outlap. And he gets ready to go in what is the ultimate display of driver performance, a qualifying lap.
He was told to press the boost a little earlier, chasing the optimum tyre temperature. Kimi Antonelli started 6th on the grid here last year. He has an improvement in the first sector. At the key moments of Q3, Antonelli is up on his rival for the title's time in the first third of a lap.
Yeah, we saw him working the
Max
wheel hard
fastest
off
sector 1.
of the exit of turn 1 as he lined it up into 2. A sort of
Let's go, Max.
rare
Let's go.
correction, if you
Very-
like, and an
very
otherwise very
brilliant sector
clean
2 by
and smooth
Russell.
race driver.
Antonelli goes fastest. 1/10
Antonelli
faster
heading to
than
turn
anyone.
10. This is crucial.
Russell
He's
goes
found that
fastest.
second sector improvement,
3/10
but Russell has
faster.
made a hallmark
Wow,
of his
damn,
weekend.
dude.
Hustling
Norris,
the car. It's
3/10
animated.
faster.
It's underneath him, and Antonelli is on for provisional pole if he can
Max,
keep the speed
decent
through the
sector
final 2 corners. But Russell is improving as well. The 2 Mercedes
Come on, Max.
going
Come
for
on.
pole position. Kimi Antonelli looking to hit the front of the field again. He's beaten his teammates' original time by 1/10 and a half. And now the pressure swings to George Russell, who is looking to return to pole position. Will it be his 3rd of the season? Russell strikes back
Max
and
goes
takes
forward,
provisional
fastest.
pole away from his teammate. No improvement sector 1 for Lando Norris. Middle sector and final sector. Get him
Adler
ahead of
goes
his
fourth
teammate.
fastest.
Get him to 3rd. Piastri is 0.2 of a second away. And DC, that car is all over the road.
Yeah, he's having
Hamilton
to
goes
fight it. The
second
tyres
fastest.
are overheating as he got low downforce through that section. Verstappen is quickest in the first sector, a little bit down in the middle, but this final part of the lap for Piastri looking a bit messy, lines up behind his teammate Norris, so it really comes down
Max
to
P5.
Verstappen quickest in the first, Hamilton quickest in the second. Let's see.
It falls away for Max Verstappen in that 3rd and final sector. Middle part of the lap for Lewis Hamilton is very strong. Hadjar goes to 5th position behind his teammate. Lewis Hamilton in the Scarlet Ferrari gets to the front row and misses out by 0.06 of a second. Where
Damn.
did that lap come from? Unbelievable. It's Russell on pole position for the Spanish Grand Prix, but a resurgent Lewis Hamilton misses out by 0.06 of a second. His best lap of the weekend by a mile. Reserved for the end, and for the first time this season, Kimi Antonelli will not start a Grand Prix from the front row of the grid. Hamilton and Russell will occupy it. Ferrari came good at the end with the 7-time champ.
Good qualifying,
They
good
missed out on a first pole
I
of the season
expected Leclerc
by
and
0.06 of a
Hadjar,
second, and
Leclerc
George
and Piastri
Russell
to be
takes pole.
above as well.
Nice work, mate. Whole position. Great job.
George, how does it feel?
Nice to feel the groove again.
What a lap. What a lap. When everyone was questioning, can he take the pressure? Can he deliver? Wow. And he shares the front row with his former teammate Hamilton, who has delivered some brilliant performance once again.
Lewis Hamilton back on the front row, and that will give him a huge amount of cheer. It is Lewis Hamilton's best qualifying result of the season so far. But for George Russell, so many saying it's make or break, and he delivered under the high pressure of Q3. Antonelli took it away. His old teammate pushed him close, but he responded to both. And the Mercedes man will start the Spanish Grand Prix from the front with his 3rd pole of the season. Pole in Melbourne, pole in Montreal, and now pole in Montmello, the town that we actually race in just outside of Barcelona. But where did Lewis Hamilton come from? I know when he's been on the front row so many times in his career, make that 176 to be exact, you shouldn't be surprised. But the Ferrari driver coming good, and said in turn 1, it got away from him. Turn 1 is where he believed it fell apart, but not by much. He's on the front row, and Antonelli is demoted to 3rd for the first time this season. Norris was 4th, Verstappen was in 5th, and then it was Hadjar in 6th place, Piastri in 7th, fading from a provisional pole after the first run. And then it was Lawson, Hulkenberg, and Charles Leclerc found the barrier, but Lewis Hamilton at the end, delivering a lap to defy expectations, and he was 0.07 of a second from ending his Grand Prix drought for pole that stretches all the way back to 2023 in Budapest.
Oh,
So Hamilton talking to George Russell and saying how tight it was. It was that second sector. He managed to find a mighty time there. Antonelli found an improvement. Well, we thought for all the world it was going to be Mercedes versus McLaren. Step forward, Lewis Hamilton. George Russell has taken pole, and it is a strong performance for the British driver. He has taken pole for the Barcelona-Catalunya Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton joining him
Max
on the front
lost
row,
everything in
and
the last
Kimi
sector. I
Antonelli
want to see what
finding
went wrong
himself
in the last sector.
in third place next to the world champion
he
Lando
pushed too
Norris.
fast
Max
in the
Verstappen
first two
in
sectors.
fifth ahead of Isaac Hadjar, and then it's Piastri, Lawson, Hulkenberg and Charles Leclerc hit the barriers. In a moment, we will hear from our top three in Parc Fermé, get their thoughts. But that was an expectation-defying final lap from Lewis Hamilton. Naomi Schiff is speaking to our top three qualifiers down in Parc Fermé.
George, a big congratulations. It's pole position for you out here in Barcelona. Momentum hasn't been on your side lately, but you've come back to the European season and you're coming swinging. So how does it feel?
It's been a great weekend so far. I kind of feel like my old self again, where sort of every lap I'm doing my job, always fighting in those top positions. Obviously, the last few races, for numerous reasons, haven't quite been on our side, but I came in this weekend with just a clean slate, felt good, and yeah, just great to be on pole.
It's obviously a very different track here. It's a traditional circuit. We've also got a step softer on the tires this year. Tell us, how was your experience during qualifying there in the car?
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting race tomorrow. You know, Lewis did an amazing job to get up there. I think that was a real surprise. We thought the fight was with ourselves and McLaren, and then, you know, Lewis has been really quick all this session. So I'm sure there's going to be a fight on our hands. Obviously, Kimi's been doing an amazing job. So tomorrow is not going to be easy from every standpoint, but I feeling ready.
Kimi, just coming over to you. Congratulations, it's P3 here. This is actually the first time this season you've qualified not on the front row. So that just goes to show how well your season's gone so far. But tell us how it was in the car for you out there.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of a difficult weekend so far for me. Didn't really have the feeling with the car. But yeah, long run was strong yesterday. So definitely we can, you know, that's a positive. But today, I've been lacking a little bit, but looking forward to tomorrow.
It's a long, hard race tomorrow, as I was just saying to George, but also one of the longest runs to turn one. So do you think being in third might be of an advantage to tuck up behind the others and get a bit of a slipstream?
Yeah, I mean, we'll try to get a good start, and then for sure we'll try to make the best use of the toe. Also, without using, we won't use any SM, so definitely the slipstream is going to be even stronger. So yeah, now obviously a lot of work to do in order to be ready for tomorrow.
Fantastic. Lewis, coming over to you, congratulations. It's P2 for you, so front row starts, which just goes to continue another great run of form. So tell us about how this weekend has gone so far for you and how it was out there for you in the car.
Are you speaking South African to me?
I mean, English with a South African accent,
I can't
guess.
hear. No, I can't hear anything. It's so hard to hear.
I'd love to come over, but I
this way.
think the cameras are going to have to follow me.
We've got a great crowd here, by the way. Always, the weather's incredible out here in Barcelona, so gracias. It feels great to be up here with them. Honestly, this weekend's been so difficult. Missing P1 was... Normally it's okay to miss P1, but it had a huge offset. So every time, so we went into P2, I was just over a second off. And then we just didn't feel quite comfortable and up to it. And these tires only last one lap, right? So you only have 2 shots at it in each session. And even if you do a cool down lap and go again, the car balance is completely off, so it's not a good reference. So then I went to P3, and again, I was easily 4 tenths, 5 tenths off, and I was thinking, geez, where am I going to get that pace? And I went and left the track between qualifying and between P3 and qualifying.
Where did you go?
I went back to my motorhome.
Okay.
Came back, and then Q1, I was first, and so I knew that I had a good balance and I was really comfortable in that first session. Q2 was a little bit harder with traffic and everything. And then, right, you know, these guys did a great lap, naturally. Congrats to George. But we're in a good position to be able to fight for tomorrow, so we have a race.
Well, even though it hasn't been a very straightforward weekend, as you've just pointed out for you, You're in the front row, you're P2. This is a track that we often say sort of shows us exactly what the pecking order is, a traditional circuit, and we get a great balance of what the teams have. Would you say, even though we've seen you up here quite a few times lately, that this is the true position of where Ferrari is at, ready to take on Mercedes every time?
Well, again, I think all weekend we've been kind of like 4/10 off these guys. And so we really, even with the upgrade, we thought that maybe that's where we were. So, for us to be that close, less than a tenth between us, shows just, it's a real showing of the hard work that everyone at the factory has done to bring these upgrades to this track. And so big thank you to everyone back in Maranello. And yeah, we just got to keep pushing, keep pushing, keep developing. And I'm hoping tomorrow we can squeeze some more out of this and hopefully keep up with these guys for once.
Okay, well, that's all we have time for. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Well done, and a great race ahead of us tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you to Naomi Schiff. Speaking to George Russell, Lewis Hamilton and Kimi Antonelli. It is George Russell on pole in Catalonia for the Barcelona Catalunya Grand Prix. And he's got his old teammate, his new teammate, and a pole position trophy coming his way. Interesting to hear his comments about being back in the groove when he was on the radio. How does it feel? There was a time where Toto Wolff wouldn't go on the radio. Lewis Hamilton's pole lap in Singapore 2018 changed all that, and now he's asking his drivers how he feels. Almost turned into a broadcaster. We appreciate it all the same. He got the answer out of his lead driver. Nice conversation between these two. Hamilton motivated, fascinating that he went for the reset. And the great Sir Chris Hoy presenting the pole position trophy. Six-time Olympic gold medalist and keen racing driver himself. Fine person to present the trophy to George Russell. Lovely moment. And Russell needed that one. It's his 10th career pole, and it gives him a foundation to fight for a Grand Prix victory that would mean so much. Acknowledging the crowd. And Toto Wolff asking how it felt on the radio. It's a long way back in the championship. All George Russell can do is focus on winning Grand Prix. He's given himself a brilliant chance with that pole position. Yeah, and it's his third of the campaign. Well, a session that defied expectations with Hamilton's late lap there. As he said in his post-interview, there were 0.4 of a second off all weekend. His teammate found the barrier, he found the front row. George Russell is on pole, though, here in Barcelona. Hamilton will start 8 meters further back. Then it's Kimi Antonelli in third, Lando Norris in fourth, and Max Verstappen in fifth place on the grid ahead of his teammate, Isaac Hadjar. Piastri in seventh ahead of Lawson, and then it is Hulkenberg in ninth place because Charles Leclerc finds himself in the wall at turn 4. Arvid Lindblad was in 11th, disappointed to miss out on Q3. He was ahead of Gabriel Borgletto. Then it was
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Ocon was ahead of